Non-dualism is the belief that nothing possesses independent existence, that all things exist through their relationship with all other things, hence that all existence is interdependent existence. As an example of non-dualism, I would like to just briefly consider the color red and see if the color red has an essence or an unchanging identity, or if actually it only exists through its relationships with other colors. Now, we can argue that the color red itself has its own identity. It's identified with a certain wavelength. We see it a certain way. So we can say just red is red and keep it simple like that. But I'm going to argue that that is actually incorrect. In the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, particularly the Madhyamaka Buddhist tradition, to argue that something has swabhava is to argue that it has own being, or an unchanging nature, a permanent quality or self-identity. If you believe this about something, then you believe that it exists on its own and not through its relationship with other things. So the thesis of my presentation is that the color red is only experienced contextually through its relationship to all other colors, and therefore it has no essence, it has no self-identity, no swabhava, or own being in Buddhist terminology. It changes based on its context, and since everything's context is changing all the time, everything is changing all the time. Now, as I said, for our first example, we can consider the color red, and we can simply say that red is red, independent of any context. It has an unchanging nature, if you will. But if we think about it, and if we pay close attention to our experience of the color red, does it really have an unchanging nature, an unchanging essence, a stable identity that never changes from one experience to the next? Does it have, as the Buddhists would say, swabhava, or independent being? Actually, I would argue that if you pay close attention to your experience of the color red in the following slides, I think that you will experience the color red in very different ways, because it will be interacting with other colors, and those colors will change how you experience the color red. Does this slide feel different from the previous slide? Is it just the combination that feels different, or has the color red itself changed due to its being placed in relationship with the color black? And then when all of a sudden the color red is placed into relationship with the color yellow, that produces an entirely different experience, so that the color red is playing a different role due to its being placed into relationship with a different color, which grants it a different role. Moving along to Christmas, now we have red in relationship to the color green, and once again, the red seems kind of different, although the shade of the color red is not changing in these slides in any way whatsoever. Non-dualism, or relatedness, or the Mahayana Madhyamaka Buddhist doctrine of emptiness, sunyata, all assert that our experience of the color red is determined by the other colors to which it is placed in relationship, just as our experience of those other colors is determined by the fact that they have been placed into relationship with the color red. So in the end, we have to ask, does the color red have swabhava? Does it have a stable identity, or is it empty of any permanent nature? I would argue that it is indeed empty of any permanent nature. And then on to the more important question, why are these questions so important? Why is this so crucial that people have debated it for years and years? Our answer to these questions is very important because it determines whether we think things have own being, an unchanging nature, an independent substance, or anything like that that we can grasp and hold on to. And if we think that things have that essence, that stable identity, then we will want to acquire them and keep them. If, on the other hand, we recognize that everything is constantly producing everything else, that everything flows, that all things are impermanent and hence always new, then we will feel at home in a universe characterized by time. But at the same time, if we are to recognize that everything is impermanent, hence everything is always new, we must also recognize that everything is in relationship to everything else. Everything in reality is non-dual, inseparable from everything else in reality, but yet not the same as the other thing, different, unique, but deeply related. Once we recognize this, then, according to the Madhyamaka Buddhists, we can then flow with reality, accepting things as they are, accepting that we are impermanence amidst impermanence, and that this is the ultimate blessing of life, for this is what renders all things new all the time. And, in the end, according to the Madhyamaka Buddhist tradition, this recognition of non-dualism, this recognition of relatedness, this recognition that everything changes through time is an essential aspect to salvation, healing, transformation, or, as the Buddhists would call it, nirvana.